Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to look at One of a Kind, the only Steve Reeves approved biography by Milton T. Moore Jr. So I did a video before on Steve Reeves' One of a Kind, this book, but I want to show you the progression, a 10-year process that it took to get the final product, which is what you're seeing right there on the screen, Steve Reeves' One of a Kind, and on the right is Milton Moore. So I'm borrowing a little bit from the stevereeves.com website run by George Helmer. This is a blog, so feel free to click on the link I'll put in the description and you can read this blog yourself. What I really want to focus on is how rare this book is, Steve Reeves, One of a Kind. And I've heard from a few people out there, like my buddy Mark, who just told me he had a copy that was signed by Milton Moore. Only 1,200 copies were printed in 1983, and this is a packed book with over 500 pictures and text. Steve loved this book so much that he would sell it at his appearances. So as we look through stevereeves.com website, you can see some of the pictures from the book. Now, this right here is one of the earliest advertisements for the Steve Reeves One of a Kind book. Giant 192-page biography. It was only $14.95. And as George Helmer says in this blog, these days, well, this blog was written 3 years ago. At that time, expect to pay around $350. If you can find it now, probably closer to $500. And if it's autographed by Milton Moore or Steve Reeves, expect to pay even more. Why? Because it is such a thorough book, and there's so many pictures that have never been seen on Steve Reeves. So Milton and Steve met in 1973, and Steve Reeves' One of a Kind was released in 1983. It was a 10-year process. So this little diagram shows you the different phases and what it took to get to the final product, Steve Reeves' One of a Kind. Phase 1 in 1973 was an unpublished biography. Phase 2 was a souvenir booklet, and we're getting ready to look at the souvenir booklet after I lay the groundwork here. I'm going to show you these different books that I'm going over right now. Phase 2B was the second edition souvenir booklet, so it was expanded. Phase 3 was a tribute, and then Phase 4 was the Steve Reeves One of a Kind book. So once again, you can go through this blog and you can read all about how Milton, for instance, hand typed 350 pages on the Reeves legacy, starting with Steve's birthright up until the present. And there's a picture of the original unpublished manuscript, Steve's copy that Milton gave to Steve. You can see where Steve marked up the manuscript and corrected certain things. Milton was very good about that, making sure that he had Steve's approval before he published anything. So right there is a letter that Milton Moore received in 1974 with a unsigned contract by Drake Publishers, who decided not to back the book due to all of the refinements and changes that were going on. And so they decided not to publish the book. And this was a very tough situation for Milton to try to find a publisher. So a rejection letter from a New York publisher. Here is the first edition of the souvenir book, Steve Reeves, front cover and the back cover. Here's a fascinating letter that Milton wrote to Steve and his wife, Aline, on initial sales of the first edition. Back in 1979, Steve's royalty was 25% off the cover price of $5.50. And there's a letter that Milton wrote, $59.34. This right here is the second edition. There's the front cover on the left and the back cover on the right. We're going to take a closer look at this one because my good friend Barry, who is a fan of Steve Reeves and has been since the 70s, was kind enough to send me this second edition. So we're going to get to look through that here in just a second. There's an ad for Steve Reeves, a tribute. There is the cover of a tribute, some pictures. There's Milton Moore, again, probably from the Steve Reeves Fitness and Film Festival. And one side note about Milton Moore is that people that have known Milton do not know where he is. So we know that he lived in Las Vegas. We know he lived in Dallas. He was homeless for a period of time. And I know that quite a few people have tried to make contact with him. So it would be really nice if somebody watching this video knew who Milton Moore was. There's a picture of Milton from 14 years ago and would let us know, let me know, let George Helmer know if he's okay. All right, next we're going to look at the actual physical copies of this book. Okay, let's take a look at the 3 books: the Souvenir Booklet, a Tribute, and One of a Kind. So this book here, a Souvenir Booklet, came out in 1980. It was 28 pages, and it was the second book. I don't have a copy of the 1979 Souvenir Booklet, but once again I got to thank Barry, my friend Barry, for sending me this. It's just incredible that he thought to do that, and I really appreciate it. So I almost have a full set. This was the second copy, Souvenir Booklet. This was the third book, a tribute, also extremely rare. And then this was the final book, Steve Reeves, One of a Kind. This one came out in 1983. This one came out in 1982, 1980, and then the first one was 1979. So let's take a closer look at this 1980. I would love to know how many of these are out there. I think it's probably extremely rare. So here's the cover. Here is the back cover. Has a slightly blue tint. Steve Reeves, Mr. America, Mr. World, Mr. Universe, Le Plus Athlete Belmonde, world's greatest bodybuilder. Internationally honored and respected by the fields of fine art and physical culture as the most perfectly developed athlete in history. I love how he calls him an athlete. Steve always talked about bodybuilding, and you should be capable to do whatever you want, not just look strong, be strong, but also be capable physically to do whatever you want. So yeah, athlete. World famous as one of the all-time leading screen attractions for his popular roles as Hercules and other heroic characterizations. Universally distinguished as an authentic man of the West and a prize-winning breeder of America's all-purpose family horse, the Morgan. Now, the subject of a forthcoming book which promises to be the personality book of the decade. Let's take a peek. Now, I had never seen that picture before getting this souvenir booklet from Barry. Definitely had seen that picture. That is, you know, there's a lot of very impressive photos of Steve, but that's got to be one of them, don't you think? So we're just going to leaf through this book real quick. I should take a peek at that. So this picture is very similar to what became the cover of a tribute. Very similar. There he is as Little Abner. Definitely have seen all of these photos. This one's really interesting right here. From what I understand, not a posed
photo. And you can tell they are in conversation about something. Wouldn't you love to know? There's Steve with the Eiffel Tower behind him. Okay, so definitely recognize Stinson Beach over there on the left. The middle pose, there is Kenneth Kendall with the James Dean bust. John Grimmick. 1948 Mr. Universe. There's the 1948 runner-up trophy. I did a video on that. If you haven't seen it, look back. Here's another one. I love these kind of pictures where Steve is taking a break and just talking to the locals. Wouldn't you love to know what he told them and how that might have impacted them in their lives? Steve Hercules Reeves. Mario Lanza and his wife Betty visiting Steve on the set of Hercules in Rome. Mario looks a little nervous that maybe Steve is going to steal his wife, Betty, there. Alright, Joseph E. Levine and Steve on the set of Thief of Baghdad. Steve and Daryl Zanuck having breakfast in Paris. Before I got this souvenir booklet, I had seen that picture right there before, but I didn't know who this man was on the left, so now we know. Steve signing an autograph to a teenage girl. Hercules seeks solace in the arms of Morpheus. And then you have a lot of celebrity photos and kind words of gratitude. So Milton really had to work hard to get all of that. Incredible. John Wayne. Jack LaLanne. Arnold. There's another picture of Steve on set. Here are some random pictures here. Steve and his mom Goldie. Probably should have posted that one on Mother's Day. Gotta love it. And it goes on. So there definitely were some pictures in here that I had not seen before. What do you think about that blue tone? You like that, or is it a little too much? Steve and Aline. Here's a good one here. So another picture that I had seen, but I didn't know who the gentleman on the right was. Notice they're staying below a sign that says Studs, and then the caption says, Steve and pal John Wiedemann posed for a tongue-in-cheek picture, Manhattan, 1953. So that was before Hercules. He must have been doing his acting, musicals, things of that nature. Deep in thought on the set of Hercules. Here's one I had not seen before. Steve with artist and bodybuilding title holder Mike Sill, who posed for the statue of, I'm not going to try to say that word, which was executed by Avard Fairbanks and stands in the center of Sparta, Greece. So had you heard of that guy before? Mike Sill on the right. I had not. Happier Times right there with Sandra, wedding picture. Steve yachting with John Wiedemann. Who is John Wiedemann? Okay, we got to figure that out. I don't know. I mean, I recognize that picture, but I'm not familiar with John Wiedemann. I'm wondering if he was another struggling actor. Winston Churchill, I often tell people about this, once commented that Steve Reeves was one of his two favorite film personalities, the other being John Wayne. He has good taste. great picture of Steve and Aline, 1963. This picture was used on the Steve Reeves Hercules cookbook right here. Probably goat's milk, refueling between takes. And then here's the back cover. Alright guys, well there you go. A very rare look, full look, at Steve Reeves' 1980 Souvenir Booklet. Once again, thanks to Barry for sending me that. I really, really appreciate it. There is the 1982, a tribute. I don't remember if I did a video on that. I'm going to look and see, and if I have not, then I will in the future. And then lastly, Steve Reeves One of a Kind. And so this was interesting. I may have covered this, but let's just do it again. To Steve and Aline, thanks for your trust and understanding. Thanks for helping me make something worthwhile out of my life. Your friend, Milton T. Moore Jr., September 23rd, 1983. So this may very well have been one of the very first copies that belonged to Steve Reeves. It came out in 1983, so this might have been one of the very first copies ever released. Alright guys, well thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you were entertained. I've got lots more coming up in the future. I'll see you next time.